You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and I'm joined by Derek Vandygriff. Well, at least one more time for this baseball season. He'll come back and talk a little football as well. But for baseball season, this kind of does it in. How are you doing, Derek?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. Pretty disappointed baseball's over. I know a lot of people are probably happy that they don't have to go through it anymore, and that Tuesday loss against Mississippi State ended. I'm not among that group. I was really looking forward to potentially making a run here, but didn't work out that way. Rebels played fairly well Tuesday. Riley Maddox was unbelievable. He was so incredible against Mississippi State. Just kind of the story of the last week plus of the season, where the offense just completely lets down a really good pitching performance, right? And that's what happened again on Tuesday. You get the Will Furnished home run for the only run of the game for Ole Miss, and we end up dropping a heartbreaker with the walk-off there with 2 outs in the 9th inning. But again, that's just kind of the way baseball works. It sucks. It is a little bit of an improvement over last year. Injuries to Elliott, Rivas, if you have those two guys, you're probably in the tournament. They're probably good for at least 3-4 more wins, whatever that might end up looking like. But that's not the way this works. You play with the guys that are on your team. This season is over with, though. I do think there are things to be excited about for the future of Ole Miss baseball. We got some guys, if they choose to come back, like that's kind of the funny thing. I was talking earlier today about what next year's team could look like. Ain't got a clue, because with the new transfer rules, it doesn't matter if you've transferred in, you can transfer again, right? So it's a total crapshoot. Does look like Andrew Fisher's coming back. He made a post on social media here on Wednesday that does make you think that he will be back in Oxford. That's obviously a huge piece to this 2025 Ole Miss baseball team. Hopefully we start seeing guys follow that same route and confirming that they're going to be here. Luke Hill, Will Furnace, Campbell Smithwick, Liam Dole, just kind of off the top of my head, guys like that I think really showed progress throughout the season that could be a foundation for either next year with transfers coming in, freshmen coming in, whatever it is. But it's important to have that foundation of players that have been here and done it before to show the newcomers how to do it going forward.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot right here, and I didn't tell you I was going to do this. So if you can't do it,
okay.
This is my fault, not Derek's. The freshmen that are signed in this Ole Miss baseball class, who are the draft risks? Who are the ones that are likely to make it on campus? Who are the names that we need to know?
Yeah, so I'm not going to be able to run through all of them. Obviously, that's on my list of things to do throughout this summer, is to get into a little bit of baseball recruiting. I have looked up some of it, though. There's this kid out of I think it's Jackson Prep. I know it's one of the prep schools down in the Jackson area here in Mississippi. He is signed with Ole Miss. He's a pitcher. He's really, really, really good. And I would say there is a 0.00001% chance he makes it to campus. Been looking at mock drafts, and several of the ones I see, he's not only mocked to go really high, he's mocked as the first high school player off the board. Really elite pitcher, really elite talent there. Talking about top 5, top 10 pick. We do have a couple more highly touted pitchers in this recruiting class. One of them from right there in Oxford, Mississippi, and then the other one from Lewisburg, I think it is. They actually went head-to-head in the playoffs 2 weeks ago, and it ended up being a 1-0 game in the 11th inning is the way that one ended up. But just because of how dominant those two guys are. But I am going to dive more into baseball recruiting. But one thing I have seen from what I have looked at so far, they've gone really starter pitcher heavy. Like I said, don't think we're going to get that kid out of Jackson, the kid out of Oxford, and I think the other one's out of Lewisburg, if I'm not mistaken. Those two cats, there's a chance they make it to campus, and they could be really good for us.
Yeah, and there's apparently an outfielder or something that they signed as well out of Arkansas, and all of a sudden everybody's getting
Mhm.
really high on him, and it's like, "Hey, this is the next Corbin Carroll," and it's like, "Well, that guy's not getting to campus."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the Jackson Jobe effect all over again, right?
Mhm.
We signed him, and he wasn't this really highly regarded prospect coming out of high school, and then senior year hits, and all of a sudden he throws 95, 96 with that huge slider that he has, and before you know it, he's a top 10 pick in the major leagues. Hopefully, that doesn't happen with that outfielder as well, but. Yes, that's one thing that we're absolutely going to be diving into throughout the summer, getting more acquainted, familiar with this baseball recruiting class, and also turning the page a little bit from on our end since we're so baseball heavy. Also getting acclimated more to the football end of it too, which is what your show is so good for, Stephen.
Yeah, and also, coming up pretty quick. I guess I will say, hey, let's do another Dids in the Dugout this week, but then we're going to go to
Hmm.
Ole Miss After Dark.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
rebrand's going to happen. It's been built out.
Yeah, yeah. This is the last week for Dids in the Dugout. Me and Hitch have been talking about it a good bit over the last couple of weeks. How we're going to kind of transition from Dids in the Dugout to Ole Miss After Dark. We decided we're going to finish baseball season. We're thinking we might have a shorter show for y'all coming up in the next day or two, just to talk about that Mississippi State game, Hoover, close the door on that, and then do a full season recap this weekend on Sunday to get to y'all. And when that's done, we're making the transition. It won't be Dids in the Dugout anymore. It'll be Ole Miss After Dark, still found in the exact same place, just a totally different name. So if y'all enjoy mine and Hitch's show, if you see Ole Miss After Dark, that's Dids in the Dugout, just a little bit different.
Yeah, and they're going to be doing their show, but also under that same brand, you'll have a show from Dalen Flowers is going to do some
Hmm.
stuff, and that is where we're going to add extra Ole Miss content, essentially underneath that brand. But Derek's going to be kind of the manager, so to speak, of that channel. So we're pretty fired up about that. Now, going
Yeah.
back to baseball real quick. Now, if you look over my right shoulder or my left shoulder, I got an autographed Will Furnace baseball on my shoulder. Nate
Hmm.
Rutherford sent me that. And it's sitting right next to my autographed Al Kaline baseball. Nate Rutherford did not send me that. But um, it's pretty excited to see Will Furnace at the end of the year, whenever all of this was going on and the roller coaster was happening, there was defensive problems and all that. Will Furnace took over at first base, kind of
Hmm.
locked it down defensively and cleaned that up a good bit, and just started mashing a little bit. And he has a chance to have a Kemp Alderman type junior year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Will is a guy that I'm really excited about for next year. And if you listen to his comments after the game on Tuesday night, that's another guy that I'm confident will be back in Oxford. It's I just always struggle with certainties in this day and age of college athletics, right? Because you never know for sure. I do expect Will to be back. Going to be a really, really big piece. Me and Hitch have talked about for weeks that what seems to be missing off this baseball team is a true leader, a guy that's going to step up, take accountability for the team, the mistakes that are made, address them, and get them fixed. Just that voice that everybody's going to listen to. Will kind of started working his way into that role a little bit over the last month, it seemed like. And after the game Tuesday night, I think he put a stranglehold on it. I think Will Furnace, Andrew Fisher, those two guys are going to be your two main leaders going into next year for Ole Miss baseball. And it's just like you said, he did such a good job over at first base. That was definitely a problem area defensively, to put it nicely, there for the majority of the year. Will moves over there, big guy, but he moves well. He's really athletic. Really played a good defensive first base and took those defensive struggles out of the Ole Miss game there. So great job by him. Hit really well in SEC play, just like he did as a freshman. Kind of seems to be the trend with him. He's going to struggle early, but boy, when it really counts, he can really mash the ball. And that's what we saw again for the second straight year this year. Got in SEC play, really started coming around, swinging it well, really solidified himself into that cleanup spot, the number 4 spot in the order. So excited about Will. I think he's going to be a big time leader on this team next year.
Yeah, and I don't know who we need to talk to, and maybe we can count on you to talk to that. But since there's no true bat contract anymore on this baseball team, there's all types of bats on the team. We have to get Will Furnace a bat that's just ping, old school gorilla ball baseball bat with Will Furnace. We need to figure out a way to make that happen. That would be fantastic.
Man, if I can just get him to take BP with like a drop 5 or something like that from 1998, that would be worth the price of admission alone. Like you would see season ticket sales sell out immediately just to watch Andrew Fisher or Will Furnace use a drop 5 to take their batting practice there. They would absolutely
they would clear the tennis court.
Things where
they'd clear the tennis court.
That's exactly what I was about to say. If y'all remember the tennis courts that were back there, it would have gone over those back in the day. Just would be dropping absolute bombs with those. That would be a ton of fun to watch.
Back in the 80s when Bo Jackson was at Auburn, back when Ole Miss played, basically they had their baseball field at the Turner Center. Bo Jackson hit a home run against Ole Miss that cleared the lights.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, it was like
Bo Jackson was on such a completely different level than every other athlete that's ever played this game. Like not this game, football as well. Anybody that's ever played any sport, Bo Jackson is on a completely different planet than any of them. It's unbelievable how hard baseball is. It's a game that if you succeed 30% of the time, you're a Hall of Famer. And he does that and plays professional football, does both of them, All-American in both in college. Quite frankly, if the longevity would have been there, he would have been a Hall of Famer in both professionally as well. Just an unreal athlete for him to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, when he ended up with the White Sox back after his injury, whenever he recovered back, baseball is it is actually an athletic game. You have to be able to move. And even with a bum hip, an artificial hip to where he couldn't run and do the things that he used to do, he was still a better athlete than 60% of the players that were playing in Major League Baseball. That's how much of a freak of an athlete he was before the injury.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think when he was with the White Sox, that's when he made that play with basically back against the wall in right field, didn't even take a crow hop, and throws an absolute laser to third base. No hops, knee high, straight to the glove, and throws out a guy tagging from second to third there. You don't see anybody in the majors today with a crow hop all the time in the world without a runner making a throw like that, much less trying to gun somebody down. That's how insane he was when he played.
Yeah, and him throwing out Harold Reynolds from the Mariners from the wall going to score. It just easily threw, and it's like, wow, he was just young bucks just don't know how much of a unicorn this man was. You might talk about Ronald Acuna and all those guys. No, none of them were Bo Jackson.
No, and the best part about him throwing out Harold Reynolds is listening to Harold Reynolds tell the story. He thought he was safe by at least 30 feet, right? I mean, there was no way that he was getting thrown out at home on that ball from Bo Jackson. And, it's, again, like you said, I'm probably a young buck. I'm 37. I didn't get to watch Bo Jackson play in his prime or anything like that, obviously, but I've watched a whole lot of videos on him. Just going back to sit down and see it because I heard so much growing up about this Bo Jackson guy and how unreal of an athlete he was, both at football and baseball. I was always drawn to the baseball part of it. That's what really wowed me with Bo Jackson. And it was hardly ever a hit or anything that he did. It was either a catch he made running up the wall or all of those ungodly outfield assists that he had. Just unbelievable.
I think his first hit with the Kansas City Royals, his first big league hit, was a home run that cleared the waterfall at Kaufman.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that's an absolute tote to get to that fountain too, especially back then.
Yeah, it absolutely unreal. Anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, we are going to get Derek's top 5 running backs in Ole Miss history. Stick around for that. Do want to tell you, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all of that screaming and shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. All right, so Derek Vandygriff is in the hot seat tonight. We are doing the top 5 running backs in Ole Miss history, just so everybody knows. People that are in the hot seat, it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because I need to be different than everybody else. So we're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 running backs in Ole Miss history, Derek. Number 5.
5, I'm going with Brandon Bolden, a guy I feel like is often overlooked in Ole Miss history, just as far as how productive he was. From freshman year all the way to senior, had 4 really good years for Ole Miss. Ended up 4th all time on the rushing list. Just a really good back, but also out of the backfield too, right? He was such a good receiver of the ball coming out of the backfield. And then he goes on and has a very long NFL career as well, mainly with the Patriots. Had a couple more stops. Really good special teams player there in the NFL. But Brandon Bolden is a guy that immediately come to mind for me, just because I feel like he's often forgotten on lists like this.
Number 4.
Number 4, I'm going with the guy that was only here for 2 years, and it's not the same guy that you went with in your list. It's not going to be Quinshon Judkins' spot here. This is the law firm, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, transferred in from Indiana, ended up 8th on the all-time rushing list in only 2 years, had 2 1,000-yard seasons, just an absolute bruiser of a back. Maybe between the tackles, one of the best we've ever had here in Oxford. Also goes on to have a good NFL career with the Cincinnati Bengals. But the law firm with 2 1,000-yard seasons, I think has to be on this list, even though that other 1,000-yard season, the first one he had, they had to go back and actually challenge for a yard to get that bumped up from 999 to 1,000. But in the history books, it's a 1,000-yard season.
I was in the building while that was going on. Langston Rogers and Kyle Campbell and all that going through film to try and find an extra yard. And when in reality, you could have just said, hey, he rushed for 1,000, not 999. Our bad, because nobody was going to go back and say that. And that might have been honestly what they did. All right, number 3.
All right, number 3. This is my first favorite Ole Miss running back. The one that I absolutely fell in love with as a kid, John Avery. Number 20, the guy was unbelievable. He was so dang fast. I don't know how anybody ever got their hands on him. And I'm a Dolphins fan, so sitting there after his eligibility's up at Ole Miss, I get to watch the NFL draft, and sure enough, I think it was pick 21 or something like that. The Dolphins come up and take my man John Avery in the first round. That kind of solidified my fandom for him there. But John Avery just the dynamic, the playmaking ability that he had. He was a true touchdown threat every single time he touched the ball.
Yes, in 1997, Ole Miss backfield had 2 first-round draft picks playing running back.
Sure did.
Number 2.
Number 2, I'm going with Dexter McCluster. Just Mr. Do everything, right? I remember the very first time I saw Dexter McCluster on a football field. I was sitting in our seats in the south end zone that we had for over 20 years. And I see this little kid, if you will. I know he's not a kid, but the small player, which ends up being Dexter McCluster, wearing number 22, warming up with the team before we played Memphis his true freshman year. And I turned to my dad and I said, "Dad, can you believe this? Look at who they've got wearing number 22. That is Deuce McAllister's number. That's who they're going to give it to. This guy is 5'6", 140 pounds soaking wet from my view, right? How are you going to give that guy Deuce McAllister's number? There's no way he can live up to it." And then you get the McCluster fluster later in the game, and I was hooked, man. All in on Dexter McCluster from then out, and quite frankly, is one of the best all-purpose players, not only in Ole Miss, but SEC history when you look at what all he was able to accomplish. Really, really great player, tough as nails too, right? With that frame, you're always worried about injury or something like that, but he wasn't afraid to get in there and get his jersey dirty, lower that shoulder, try to get an extra couple yards, and that's just if he felt sorry enough for you that he didn't want to break your ankles.
Number one.
Number one is the absolute GOAT. The only time you're going to have a pick as easy as this is when you get to your linebacker rankings, right? Number one is Deuce
Jeff Harrod,
McAllister.
right?
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, Deuce, man, how unbelievable was he? I remember, obviously, as a kid growing up and watching him. So this is against UNLV. This isn't a huge game or anything, but we've got UNLV at home for homecoming. Deuce has a bum leg, and you don't see him basically the entire game until we get down. I think it was into the fourth in regulation. We were down by 7, had to have a touchdown. We put Deuce in, and he literally jumps off one leg 3 times until he gets into the end zone, gets us to overtime, and he goes back in there and scores a touchdown to win this game in overtime for us. I know he's had a lot more memorable moments than against UNLV, but seeing him go out there with that injury, obviously hobbled, not himself, and still be able to get the job done, the grittiness, the toughness. And as you said, he is the second first-round running back in that 1997 backfield there with John Avery. And he was just so much fun to watch. Kick returns, punt returns, catching it out of the backfield. What was it, a 97-yard punt return against or kickoff return against Arkansas there in 1999? Is that right? 98, 99? Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just an absolutely dynamic player, and his professional career, speaks for himself. When he retired, was the all-time leading rusher for the Saints. There will never be another Deuce McAllister in my mind. Somebody can come in and rush for 10,000 yards in 3 seasons, and you can turn around and ask me my top 5 running backs again. Deuce McAllister is going to be number one.
Yeah, he was born in the 90s and all that, but basically he was from that generation when the Herschel Walkers and Bo Jacksons and Marcus Dupree's, those running backs existed. That's what Deuce McAllister was. It was just 15 years later.
Yeah, it was just later. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he just did everything so dang well. And if he ever got into the open field, you could forget about it. You don't hear a lot of people talk about his speed. It's always how powerful he is and how well he cuts between tackles, making people miss when he needs to. But, man, if he ever got into the open field, you were not catching him.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Derek Vandygriff, thank you so much, man. And we will talk to you maybe next week as well. We'll figure out a way to do some football or something.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate it, bud.
All right, man.
All right. Hi, Toddy.
Hotty toddy.